Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this very interesting little knife right here. This is the Maserin 389-RV/RV. And first off, I want to thank very, very much the Von Banks family for sending this little guy along. These are Patreon patrons of mine, and they said, Nick, I found something I think you're really going to like, and I think I'd love to see on the channel, and they donated this to me, and that's really, really kind of them. I very much appreciate it. So thank you very much for that, Von Banks family, and this will be going to a good cause. So there you go. Next thing, size comparison. This is not a very large knife. Here it is against the Ontario Rat number 2, the Ontario Rat number 1. Here it is against the Spyderco Delica. And actually, while I'm thinking about this, let me grab a couple of other quick knives that are nice comparisons here. Yeah, this ought to do. Come on. Come on, people. There we go. A couple of other sort of classier, gentlemanish knives, gentle lady, gentle person. I'd rather have a general neutral term for that. Whatever it is, these are some knives designed for fancy folk. This is a Wall Street GEC 99 pattern. This right here is a slip joint by J.E. Made. Again, very sort of gentle folky, if you will. Here it is with the TRM Neutron. And then here it is with perhaps the consummate gentle person's knife, the Chris Reeve Knives Nandi. Very, very interesting piece. And so you can see size-wise, it's not so far away from that. It is a little bit thicker by a pretty substantial margin, but that's kind of the area it's in. Then next thing, who the heck is a Maserin? So Maserin is an Italian company based out of Maniago, where most of their knife industry is. And this is, and they make knives. I think they're an OEM for a bunch of folks, but they make other knives under their own brand. This is maybe the first one I've ever had on the channel. And this particular model was designed by Attilio Marotti, who I hadn't heard of before, but is doing pretty good work. So let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, the ugly of this very interesting little knife right here. It's the good side. To start with, this is a very nice compact size. You can see here, size-wise, we are coming in just on like about 2.75 inches, which is a very, very nice little approach. I like very much the size here because it's going to be legal in a lot of places. That's nice. Next thing, this is got pretty good ergonomics. Because it is a relatively rounded knife in the hand, you've got some, it's good in the hand. It feels nice. That's a nice thing. Next thing, this is a borderline front flipper. What I mean by that is, see here, it's got this little top bit here. If there was just a little tiny bit of jimping there, this would 100% be a front flipper, but even as it is, you can kind of use it to flip the knife open even without the thumb stud. And, you know, if you're super skilled, it's also a little sharp up there, but you can do it. So it is, I guess, a front flipper, which is something to keep in mind. That's good. Next thing, it actually can also be flicked open, although it's the easiest way to deploy it is obviously just slowly using the thumb to roll it out there. But I've actually been able to flick it out as well once I got in there and did some lubrication. Well, got part of the way in there. Did some lubrication. That definitely made things easier. So there's that. Next thing, this guy comes with a slip, a pocket slip. And this little guy right here, see, says Maserin on it, made in Italy. And it's actually a reasonably nice little leather sheath here. Pop this in, a little bit flimsy at some level, but you know, you can throw this guy in your pocket and that way it can rattle around in there and not be damaged. So that's a nice thing. The action on this guy is smooth enough. It's still got a little bit of the Teflon stick slippiness to it, but you know what? It's okay. The action on this guy is absolutely fine. The blade on it is actually pretty nice. It comes down to a very thin edge, which is actually very, very thin by Italian standards. They tend to run thicker grinds. But it's S35VN steel, which is a beautiful thing. It's a great blade steel with relatively thin stock and a relatively thin grind, which is nice. And then finally, the price on this is quite good. $85 for S35VN and this kind of a burl wood. This is a green burl wood is what they describe it as. That's a pretty solid price point. I like that very much. And so to me, all of that is the good, is that this has a very nice price, a reasonable blade. It can be flicked open. It includes this pocket slip there. It is a borderline front flipper with good ergonomics and a nice compact size. On the great side to me, this guy is a very classy little knife. What I mean by that is that no one is going to look at this and go, oh my God, weapon. Well, okay, I should never underestimate the ability for people to be scared or fearful, but nevertheless, this is very likely to have people look at it like, oh wow, that's really nice. It feels arty, and especially when you add in little details like this file work in the back here, the polish on the back spacer, the thinness of the blade, the overall profile of it. This is a knife that is eminently classy, 100%. With this burl wood, with the small blade, the great line is, there is a lot to love about this, and so I believe this to be a very nice, more formal, more classy sort of knife. That's a beautiful thing, and especially carried in this slip. Yeah, they've done good work there. So, to me at least, that's what's great about this, guys. This is a very, very nice, sort of classy, higher-end, fancy knife. Well, not higher-end in some senses, Teflon, but it is definitely a higher fancitude knife, if you will. On the bad side, this badly does need a detent ramp. See here, you pop it open, and then you push, and then eventually it breaks free. A little bit of detent ramp help would make this a beautiful thing. Next thing, they're using flathead screws for some damn reason. That's not great. Those are going to get chewed up over time. Not a huge fan of that. But, you know, it actually doesn't matter because it's not really disassemblable anyways. So we'll get there in a second. But nevertheless. Next thing, the blade on this guy is crowned. It is rounded over. That's a great thing. The backspacer, however, is not. And so you end up with this weird disconnect right here. I almost wish at some level that they had rounded the backspacer as well, so there was a little bit of a drop as well, because this isn't unattractive up front here. Not a huge deal, but it's definitely a thing. Next thing, they are using these relatively sharp angles at the edge of the handle. They've done a little bit of breaking at the edge there, but I'd like to see this sort of rounded a little bit more for ergonomic reasons. I think that would be a little bit better. Next thing, this is not the nicest thing to close. You can see here you do have a little tiny gap to get your finger in there, but you're kind of sliding it into a very specific hole and pressing up against this file-worked liner. Not a huge fan. And considering that the liners are a little bit slick as well, I've slipped out of that a couple of times. So I'd kind of like to see a slightly bigger cutout here. That would also help with the overall gription of the knife. And then finally, there is no clip option on this guy. This knife, it carries fine in a slip, and if you're used to that kind of thing, but the thing is, this is not necessarily a knife that is super slip-ready to me. Being as thick as it is, and it's also being relatively heavy at 2.62, I mean, it's not like heavy in the classical sense, but this is not, you know, for instance, a little tiny guy, you know, 1.5 ounces. That feels fine in a slip to me. So this guy is just a little beefy for a pocket slip. And so I would kind of like to have a clip option here. Some nice classy clip on the back side I think would make this guy more compelling to a wider group of people. There's also something to be said for keeping the lines cleaner and whatnot, but I didn't enjoy carrying this guy in a slip particularly. It's a little bit bigger than I generally like to go, and more specifically, it's thicker. I mean, this is also a reasonably heavy knife, but it's not nearly as thick, and so it's not quite as big of a lump in the pocket as this ended up being. So, to me, I think I would probably prefer this with a clip, but it's not a huge deal. So on the bad side, no, that is the bad side. There's no clip option. It's not the nicest thing to close with that tiny little gap here. Get these sharper angles at the base or the edge of the handle. The blade is crowned, the spacer isn't. The flathead screws aren't great, and it badly needs a detent ramp. On the ugly front, there are two ugly issues here. I mean, to start with, it is not really super disassemblable. What happens is you take these screws off here and here, and then you realize, oh god, I got to take the other ones off. So you take these off here and here. Then you realize, okay, so I got to turn the pivot, and then you start turning the pivot, and then you realize that the other side is turning, but the other side is not actually tooled. It doesn't even have like a flat edge or anything like that. It is just a round circle that the pivot screws into. And so as a result, it is a free spinning pivot with the other side being basically non-tooled. Now, I kind of imagine that I could get up in there if I was really dedicated. If I had like a bench vise that I could grab the other side of this with, then I could probably get this popped loose, but it's also got some thread locker in there. It's just not great. I'd like to see at the very, very least some flattened edges on the side of that circle to make this a little bit easier, but no, not a big fan of that. And so this is not a knife that disassembles well. I ended up just hitting the inside here with some 5-weight nano oil. Smoothed it out a bit. That's not great. The other issue here is plainly visible there. These are a plastic or Teflon washer. This is a knife over $30. That's not a great plan. So I'd like to see him move to an actual washer, maybe some variety of metal or another, because I think the action would be a little nicer as a result. This is not as stick-slippy as some, and in fact, in terms of Teflon washer actions, it's better than the average, but it's still not great. The very best thing that can be said about Teflon washers is that they can be almost as good as phosphor bronze, so don't freaking do it. So to me, that's what's ugly, is they're using Teflon washers for some reason in a knife that's not sold in a gas station, and that's bias completely 100%, and it is not disassemblable, and that's just going to be annoying for a lot of folks. Final conclusions, I find this to be a very nice little gentle person's knife. It is well built, it has some nice touches, and a blade that is quite workable, actually. This blade can put in good work, and it's all for a price that's pretty good. $85 for something with a nice wood scale here. decent enough action. S35 VN. You know what? That's not bad at all. And so there's a lot to love about this guy. It is a little weird to carry, being thicker and heavier than some. It's not so nice to close. It's not super disassemblable, and it is using Teflon washers for some damn reason. But it is overall a very nice piece. And so if you were looking for something along these lines, something relatively small, something very classy, and something that's not going to break the bank, something that, looks fine, taking it out of your slacks, so to speak. That sounds really... Anyways, it looks fine when you're in a more formal situation. There we go. But also is not going to break the bank. I think this little guy might be Maserin your wheelhouse. In your wheelhouse, Maserin? No? I did my best there. So anyways, there you go. I hope you enjoyed this, that this review didn't get too burly, and that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.